You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 238 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dow here with Pankaj Bhojwani. As always, this week on the pod, we are recapping our weekends from the Calling Sydney and the Battle Hardened in Tacoma, plus talking about format evolution as we are now just 1 week out from the World Championships, and things are happening, Pankaj. It's not all set in stone, that is for sure, as we saw over the weekend. But first things first, how are you?
I'm doing good, and as you said, there has been this narrative, I think, the past few weeks that this format has been solved and the meta is stale, but I'm with you. I think there is still a lot more evolution happening, particularly when it comes to the lists specifically.
Yes.
When it comes to the little tech choices, the little plans they have for the mirrors and for the other top decks and stuff, that to me, I'm getting more and more hype as we approach Worlds, both for CC and LL, which feels a little bit of a unique perspective. I feel I've been seeing a lot more dooming or a lot more complaining that the meta is like stale or solved already, but it really doesn't feel that way to me. I think at a high level there is a lot more evolution, as you put it, happening within the lists.
I think what I've learned about Flesh and Blood over time is that no matter what, once you get halfway through a season and towards the back half of the season, doesn't matter what's happening, doesn't matter how healthy the format is in reality, people will still complain. People will still take issue with particular decks. A meta is always going to coalesce to top decks. Like that's just how card games work. Go and look at any other card game in the history of card games, and that is how that works. Or any game for that matter, right? Any strategy multiple strategies will rise to the top, right? I mean, it's so funny. You look at sports, like there are metas within sports as well, and the way that people approach things. But I think maybe this evolution is a little bit unique this time around, and maybe this is where people are focusing their negative attention, I'll say, in that it is the same heroes that it's been through since the midway point. However, the lists, like you say, the evolutions of the card choices and the particular strategies that these heroes are enacting is reacting and changing week on week to everything else that is happening in the format. And we'll get into the main topic of the pod, but we saw that in a big way this past weekend, and we're seeing diverging thought processes on exactly what you're just speaking about, which I'm really excited to get into, because we just had the last calling, of course, before we hit the World Championships, and we'll look at the top 8, but look at the top 16 as well. So very unique decks and also lists within that.
And also to your point about all metas will coalesce to the top decks, these top decks don't feel as oppressive as the top decks that we've seen in the past.
Not.
This is not Zen. This isn't Zen Nu meta. This isn't Enigma Aurora meta. I mean, just look at the PQ results, for example. After the top 3 decks, there is a whole wide variety of other decks that are around and can play and have serious game in the format. To me, this, dare I say, this might be one of the best metas we've had coming into a Tier 4 event. So, yeah, I know, but it just feels like a scary thing to say, because so many people have been complaining about it. But I'm super looking forward to this, further evolution of the CC meta as we lead up to Worlds, and LL as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is the healthiest meta game we've ever had, honestly. And when it comes to, and I think that you can see that at the top level, at the ProQuest level as well. So whether that's tier 2, tier 3, we're obviously going to get tier 4 this coming weekend or next weekend as you listen to this, which is super exciting. And I think I'm super happy. I do think this is the healthiest format we've had in terms of representation. I think the top 2 decks are going to have less representation than the top 2 decks from any tier 4 we've had previous to this, except for I think Worlds in Barcelona, where that format was just confusing, to be honest, and there were so many heroes on the edge of Living Legend heading into that. So yeah, I am really looking forward to see how this plays out. And on the back of that, we head into a Road to Nationals season effectively with this format, right? Because we don't have another set releasing for Road to Nationals as well.
Yeah, unless they choose to ban something,
which I think they will.
Unless they choose to do that, which maybe could happen, but again, I think we're both on the same page here. With this meta, does feel very healthy. It has its established top decks, and maybe they ban something just to shake that up. But I don't know. There's a new set coming in February as well. December and January. Like December's like nothing's really happening anyway, so maybe the ban just to shake things up. But in terms of health of the metagame and gameplay, it feels like I don't think much is needed. Maybe a slap on the wrist for Verdance, just so she isn't shutting down so many things.
Yeah, I want to do this a little bit backwards, just very quickly, before we go into This Week in Flesh and Blood. Quick question for you. So we have the Road to Nationals announced. Road to Nationals, of course, are happening through January. They basically kick off straight after the new year into early February. But usually with Road to National season, the last 2 years we've had a new set, right? Like it's not been after this close after Worlds, is what I mean. So
yes, I believe Hunted came out and then we had RTN. Because
Yeah.
I think I played Marinette and my RTNs. So yes, I think you're right.
So do you think, first of all, do you think they will? Secondly, do you think they should throw in something into the ban and restricted just to shake up the format before the new set drops? Because this will be a continuation of the World Championship format. But one thing I want to just caveat, unless, of course, we have a hero that has something legend, I think at this point can realistically only be Kano, or something happens at the World Championship that kind of takes this format by storm.
Well, there's also the Armory decks. There's two Armory decks coming out.
Reiner and Arachne, right?
And Slippy. So I don't think Reiner is going to change much.
No.
But Slippy,
unfortunately.
Yeah,
you're right.
Okay, crazy take. They could just unban bonds. Like, I think something that this format currently is missing is a Syndra Predator, right?
I agree.
Because Verdance and Gravy sort of shut out everything in this format that could prey on Syndra. Mm-hmm. Like, Marinette kind of can exist, but they are unfavored into both Gravy and Verdance. Yeah. It's a bit of a tough ask. I think of Marlin as well as a Syndra Predator, but I don't want to play Marlin into Gravy or Verdance. The thing about Slippy is that at least Slippy can play into both Gravy and Syndra, and then suddenly maybe they can become a bit of a play of the metagame as well. So maybe it's like unban bonds, or the Slippy Armory deck actually allows them to come back into the metagame, and that could be enough of a shakeup maybe for RTN.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I guess to your point, if that doesn't happen, what do you think?
I think if they ban something, it would be just to shake things up because people are maybe getting bored and like frustrated.
Unless it was preemptive, for the new set. They've done that before. They've done that before.
Yes. Yeah, I think with the opinion where I don't think it's very necessary, but I could see them doing it just maybe to increase participation at RTNs or something, because if people are like frustrated, they might not show up to the RTNs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Cool.
Yeah. Or actually, I think something that could very realistically be done, just like slap on the wrist for Verdance in terms of like, maybe like ban like a Scour or like the mental block, where it's just like, because of Scour, Fang just doesn't even get to like, isn't even allowed to like step in through the door, for example. Like she does have like some of these cards which are like, okay, it's very easy for her to include, and then some other decks just don't get to play the game because of it. So if maybe they just do that, so that maybe someone can, so then maybe like Fang becomes a bit more of a player kind of thing. I could see something like that. I feel like a drastic shakeup just for the sake of it, just for January, for RTN season, and then a new set drops, which potentially shakes things even more, feels a little. It just feels a little unnecessary to me. What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think they should just for it would be effectively just for January, right? Because February the new set drops.
Yeah, but it could be preemptive as well in terms of what's happening with the format. So I would make a banning. I would. What did you say for a slap on the wrist for Verdant? Sorry, you were saying
Scour or mental block.
Yeah. So I would ban. Or I would restrict Scour. I think could be interesting. Restricting Scour to one copy, or just banning it entirely. I would also
please ban.
Okay,
can we not have these super
fine.
Impactful one-offs?
That's fine. Okay, ban Scour. I would also. I think mental block is fine. I would do both, or I would ban Fruits of the Forest plus Scour, and then I would ban Wrath of Retribution.
Oh, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, same thing about can we not have super impactful one-offs? You tell me you want to ban Wrath, I'm like down for that just on principle.
To be fair, Wrath of
the Fruits of the Forest,
it's just so good into a lot of these. It's not even good into Verdance. It's not even good into like some of these other decks. It's like the best card in the mirror, and it's the best card in against Gravy. But like you can play Stonewall Gauntlet in Verdance so easily.
Well, I would say it's still good against Verdance because it basically traps up their arm slot. It basically, I can't block with Stonewall Gauntlet until I see the card.
Yeah.
Or unless I'm like really desperate. Which matters, right? I mean, Syndra does sound.
It does matter.
It's like there are times.
But I think Syndra is fine. I think Syndra having a good match against Verdance is perfectly reasonable. It's just that those two decks combined. Yeah. So I'd be happy if they were like Scour, Mental Block, Wrath of Retribution. Let's go into January, Road to Nationals and see what happens.
I'd push back against the Fruits ban just because there's no point hitting Florian when he's already... Well, I want to say he's down, but then he's like 4th most winning this past weekend, so what do I know? But yeah.
That's fair. I think Fruits and Florian is kind of whatever anyway, honestly.
I mean, with the movement towards like CMH, which I think a lot of them are, CMH and Channel Millennium Tree, the Blue Fruits ban would hurt.
It would hurt a bit.
Like
it hurts
like, I think...
more.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it does... With the plans that Florence are trying to do with CMH, like they do need their Blue Earth cards. I think like we spoke about this when Germinate got unbanned. The best thing it did for the deck is that now it can run CMH and has better cards like as an Earth block 3 to like go with the CMH. And I think Fruits is in a very similar category where it's this Blue Earth card that you can still convert in some ways when you don't draw a CMH with it. It'll be like just like a unnecessary what's it called? Crossfire hit.
Yeah, that's fair.
Splash damage. Yeah.
Okay. Let's. So, how was your week in Flesh and Blood? You were in Tacoma for the Battle Hardened.
Yeah, I played Battle Hardened Tacoma. Yuki and Ellie drove down from Vancouver Friday night, and then they stayed at my place. And we drove over to the Battle Hardened the next morning, Saturday. I was on Verdance. Yuki was also on Verdance, and Ellie was on Phi. For me, tournament didn't go so well.
Sorry, did you mean Syndra?
No, Ellie was on Phi.
Okay.
Rising Rebellion.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Which she did win a Pro Quest with.
Yeah. Wow.
A few weeks ago. So just funny. No, did you mean Syndra? Did you mean the other Draconic Ninja? No. Yeah. So tournament didn't go so well to me. For me, I was out by round 5. I was X2 by round 5. I lost to Gravy round 3. It was funny. My first 3 rounds were all against Gravies. I beat the first 2 Gravies, and then I played Jude Cornett, the local legend out here in the PNW region, and I lost him in a very close game. It was just, it was a spot where he's dead to Burn Bear if I draw it. He's dead to Strider's Burn Bear, even if he, no matter how many cards he has in hand, because he's at that life total where with AB2 it doesn't matter. I'll be able to kill him with Burn Bear Winning Moon, and it was one hand away, and then he sent a boat at me and I died. So it was a very close game against him. Round 3, I lost that. And then 2 rounds later, I lost against Syndra. One of those games where, what I found about the Syndra Verdance matchup is that you can maybe come back from 1 all-red hand as the Verdance, but you can't come back from 2 all-red hands unless the Syndra also bricks. And that's kind of what happened. I had 2 dud hands where just didn't get to play my card, and tried to Providence into a blue as well, and didn't find it. So then it's you just end up falling too far behind in that case. So then that was the end of my run. Yuki and Ellie did pretty well though. Ellie went up to get 9th, and then Yuki got top 4. So was just good time all around. And I definitely had a lot of fun. I would say that way. While the tournament didn't go so well, I enjoyed my games of Flesh and Blood. I enjoyed just being there at the event. It's been a while since I've played properly. And yeah, it was awesome. Actually, before we go into your weekend, I do want to shout out and give you kudos for an amazing job casting.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed you and Matt's cast at the Calling Sydney. Also, just 2 of you for the entire calling every single round. That is a lot of work as well, and I think you all just absolutely killed it and kept the energy up all the way until the end. It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I had a great time. I mean, it's so smooth now, I think, in terms of where Ethan and Savage Feats and LSS as a collective, with Sam obviously being the show producer and things like that. I think they've just got into such a good spot, honestly, and it just makes our lives as casters easy enough that you can do something like that. I mean, I don't think you can do that for obviously every event, but this is a 7-round day 1, 7-round day 2 sort of thing. So I think it makes it a little bit easier. this format is like fairly fast as well, which helps out as well, I think. But no, it was great. And I actually had a quick question for you. Actually, Tacoma. How many players ended up being in Tacoma for the Battle Hardened, and what was the Sunday event in Tacoma?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't remember how many players there were. I believe it was 7 rounds. 7 rounds of Swiss. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember how many players there were. And the PQ Plus on Sunday was CC as well. We actually didn't end up going for it. Yuki and Ellie wanted to go home Saturday night after Battle Hardened. And once they said they were going home, I decided to make other plans on Sunday as well.
Fair
so
enough.
we didn't play in that. But one of my locals actually won that on Florian. It was a CC
Nice.
event.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then Tacoma was won by Lucas Ng, also from Vancouver, on Verdance.
Yes, I did. I mistakenly said on the cast. Someone told me a piece of information just before I went on to cast a round, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the Tacoma Battle Hardened should have like finished. This is day 2 at this point, so it's like my Sunday. I'm like, oh yeah, it should have finished by about now." Someone's like, "Oh." I think it was like having a conversation with Ethan, and we are talking about Prism, and I got a bit confused with what he was saying. And he was like, "Oh yeah, Kevin Murphy won the Battle Hardened on Prism," and what he meant was he won it after release weekend. And what I heard was, "Oh, he won the Battle Hardened this weekend," because I knew there was a Battle Hardened happening. So I'm like, "Oh, like we've got a Prism on stream." I'm like, "Prism already won an event this weekend." Shout out to Kevin Murphy. Apparently he's in the chat. And he's like, "Yeah, no, I did not. I'm not even there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well." Fix that up next round. Ethan's like, "Wait, where did you hear that from?" And I'm like, "I heard that from you." And he's like, "That's not what I said."
That is amazing. We love that.
We fixed that up on the stream. But no, great weekend from my side. I mean, very lucky to have a calling in literally basically my backyard. I was saying to Pankaj before, a 10-minute drive from my house, so I got to stay in my own bed for the calling. Got to obviously cast this one rather than play, and had a great time. Shout out to Matt Bramwood, who jumped on the cast with me as well. And yeah, I said to you already, Pankaj, but just having a great time being back in the booth. I've done some in and out, right? Played Singapore, but casted London earlier this year. Did the world premiere in Taipei in the booth. Played Auckland calling a couple of months ago, and then casted this one. So been kind of just doing one for one recently, and yeah, looking forward to hopefully doing something similar next year, honestly.
More to come, I'm sure. This one though, what's a Philly you are missing? So that means if we follow the pattern, does that mean you're playing or casting Yokohama?
Well, it gets thrown out, right? Because I'm not traveling to this one at all. So I guess that one is up for debate.
It resets. It's a reset.
Debate.
New year, new events. But yeah, I'm sure there's more to come. I think a lot of people enjoyed your cast, me included. So
yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I also wasn't in. What was the second PT of this year? Oh no, it was Singapore. Of course, I went to both
Singapore.
PTs.
Yeah, you were playing.
This is the first year I've been to. So I've every year, apart from the first year of Flesh and Blood, I've missed an event. So I missed Baltimore in year 2. I missed Amsterdam year 3. This is year 4 of PT, right? And I'm going to miss the World Championships. So it's just the way it has to kind of be because of work and things like that. I just can't get to all the events. So I generally go to the ones that I'm most excited about, or the ones I can make work with my schedule. Or I will not travel to the furthest one. And this year with schedule and also happens to be the furthest one, that ends up being Philadelphia.
Yeah. You were almost not going to make it to London either, right?
Yeah.
Until they asked you to come cast it.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that was part of the opportunity, honestly, which is fantastic. So yeah, I wouldn't have played London though. I wasn't planning to play London, but then I probably would have been at the Worlds. So just
I see.
Just the way it goes. Anyway, let's get on to the news, Pankaj.
Let's do it. So first, we have a congratulations to Gordon Cole on taking down Calling Sydney on Syndra. Honestly, this guy's such a beast. Second Calling win, and at Tier 4 events, he's constantly like on the cusp. I know he definitely top 16 one of the Tier 4s recently, and he's just always been up there. And I mean, the World Tour leaderboard shows it as well. Speaking of the World Tour leaderboard, in that region, the APAC region, there's 5 people competing for first in a very neck and neck race, which includes Shure Wu, the Pro Tour Singapore winner, Nick Butcher, Pudding Tom, and Gordon. And Jacob Clemens. Oh wait, no, Jacob Clemens is the other region one we're talking about.
There's 4 at the top, but there is like a bunch of people that could still, in theory, if they put up a top 8 at Worlds, actually surpass them. A top 4 at Worlds, surpass them. I think, which is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna quickly look up the World Tour points for the APAC region.
Yeah, it's just crazy though. That's what we're talking about a lot on the cast this weekend, is just how insane it is, how close that region is, because Brody's sewn up the Americas, Jacob's sewn up Europe. They're still fighting it out for overall, the two of them, because they're so far ahead. And Jacob clawed back points yet again on Brody this past weekend. Jacob is one round away from another calling top 8. I think that would have been his 4th calling top 8 this year if he top 8'd that. Maybe 5th, actually. When was Sao Paulo? Was that end of last year?
Don't fully remember, but yeah, Jacob Clemens has been on an absolute tear. Yeah,
it's just craziness.
Yes, it's Justin Koo. I don't know how I could have.
Justin Koo. Yeah.
Justin Koo, but yes, he's the 5th. There's 5 of them fighting for top of the World Tour leaderboard in the APAC region. Gordon being one of them, and yeah, it's really firing up there. And then, as you said as well, for the overall player of the year, Brody and Jacob Clemens are just neck and neck. They're like, Brody's just 11 points ahead, which means anything can happen in Philly.
Yeah, because how many points is it for that you get at the World Championships potentially? Because even in APAC region, like you just spoke about, like Shoma Yamamura, CYK Lionel, they're on 40 points, so they're 21 points behind Pudding Tam. So I think in theory, they could still potentially, but it's basically a 5-horse race between Nick, Gordon, Shireu, Justin, and Pudding at this point. With Pudding now, after this weekend, and his top 8, holding a 1-point lead over Justin. And then, yeah, it's literally... Nick was first, right? And he's dropped back to 5th after this weekend. That's how close it is.
Yeah, so super exciting over there. But yeah, congrats again to Gordon Cole for taking down the Calling Sydney. And we have some ProQuest results from this past week, which has shown a little bit of an interesting shift. So we have Syndra and Verdance at the top. So Verdance has been dethroned as a place in the top from the past 2 weeks, I believe, before this. And Syndra's back on top now with 11 wins. Verdance is a close second, though, with 8. But in third place, Hayden, it's no longer Mr. Gravy Bones. We have 3 other heroes before we see Gravy Bones again. No, 4 other heroes, actually. We've got Kasai, Florian, and KO Armed and Dangerous, all at 5 wins. And then we have Gravy, Acilio, and Arachne Marinette, all at 4 wins each. So Gravy seems to have fallen off the third place, if you will, though I do have a bit of a theory on that. I believe you do as well. And then we have this Kasai, Florian, and Chaos, which we have been seeing the past few weeks as well, sort of hovering around outside the established top meta.
So I have 2 theories on the Gravy piece specifically. I have a overarching theory just in relative to the hero spread from this weekend, which is that I think the top 2 decks are the top 2 decks, and they've consistently been the top 2 decks, Syndra and Verdance. Although, Gravy has something to say about that earlier in the format. I think one thing we will talk about in the main topic, which is as we go through the evolution of this format, is that I think the evolution is hurting Gravy, and the spread on the health of this format is also hurting Gravy, because a hero like Acilio, a hero like, Kano, if you aren't prepped for it, like these heroes in the fringes, Dash.io, for instance, are really hurting Gravy in particular. Even Kasai, right? I think, people have been working on that matchup. Kasai, obviously 5 wins this past weekend, very close to a couple of top 8s in Sydney. I think there's 1 or 2 in the top 16, 2 that were in the running down to the last 2 rounds for top 8 at the Calling Sydney. So the other, I think there is a piece around Gravy that we'll talk about in these evolution. The other piece as well is I think just a lot of players, typically the best players are going to win early, right? And you win early. Now with the ProQuest changes, you are going to, you're going to bow out. And I think that's where you see a bit more of a spread of heroes as you go later into the format. There's the players that consistently play in top 8, and I'm not going to say gatekeep, but knock people out in top 4s, things like that, week after week, just isn't necessarily happening. So I do think that just naturally lends itself to a flatter distribution of hero spread, which is basically what you've seen here, where it's like, yep, Syndra Verdance, and then you're like 5-5-5, 4-4-4, 2-2-2-2, 2-2-2, 1-1-1 from this past weekend. And there's also this events, and there was other things happening like Calling Sydney, Battle Hard in Tacoma. So there's other events happening around that space as well, where players' attention is diverted potentially. So anyway, that's kind of my spiel.
That second theory you said, that was my theory as well. That because we're in the later weeks of ProQuest season, with the latest changes, we have a lot of the best players already have won. And particularly, I think this affects Gravy disproportionately compared to the other heroes like Syndra and Verdance. because of how skill expressive the deck is, especially given that, you will need to probably face a couple of Syndras on your way to winning a ProQuest. And we've seen what a player like Justin Koo can do when you give him Gravy and he beats a Syndra on stream, right? Like what happened at Calling Sydney. We saw that happen in the previous Calling he played as well, and the Battle Hardened. So you need to be of that caliber to be able to take down a ProQuest as Gravy. There aren't too many players that are of that caliber, and I think those that are did win in the earlier weeks. And you could say the same should apply for Verdance and Syndra, and they should have fallen off as well, except I do think the skill expression in Gravy does make him a little bit more vulnerable to winning more compared to the other two decks. That's my theory.
I think that's
which
fair.
Is basically your second theory. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just going to put a little teaser out for what I want to talk about as we get further into the pod in relation to that. In relation to my first theory, Matt Rogers.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, Matt Rogers on day one. We spoke about it on the cast for Calling Sydney. If you haven't gone and checked it out, come on, go and do it. Throw me some support. Why not? But we saw Matt Rogers on day 2, and we look back at his day 1. He had beaten 3 Gravies as Verdance on day 1. And you're like, oh, 3, day 1, right? Calling, beat 3 Gravies, whatever, as Verdance. Justin Koo, he beat. Dennis Zhang, he beat. And people may not know Quan Lee, but Quan Lee is a very good Australian player as well. So it's not like he beat 3 slouches that didn't know what they're doing with Gravy. And, when you see that Verdance is beating Justin Koo on Gravy, I think you should stand and pay attention, I think. So anyway, that's something we can talk about as we get into the main topic of the pod. But I do think there is a multitude of reasons that Gravy has dropped away this past week. Not just one single one.
For sure. The evolution of the Verdance list to combat Gravy has been a very, very fascinating progression, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And Matt Rogers' list is so unique, actually, for that. I think it is quite well equipped for the Gravy matchup. I think he has a strategy for Gravy, which maybe potentially people weren't fully expecting, or it's just, honestly, a lot of his card choices are actually just really, really good for the strategy of like fatigue out of Gravy. So I think that's the main thing. So yeah, we have to see how it progresses. We have to see whether the Gravies can adapt back. I think I'm starting to see some of that already, but that's for the main topic when we talk about evolution. Let's move on to the Command and Cookout, unless there's anything else in the news. Oh, yes, there's one more. Living Legend wins this past ProQuest, this past weekend of ProQuests. This is obviously post BNR. We have Starvo and Viserai at 2 wins each, and then we have Zen and Dash.io at 1 win each. Of course, small sample size of ProQuests, so can't read too much into the data, but maybe it could be argued that, okay, the bans did go ahead and open up the format a little bit, and we're seeing Dash.io and Zen now in the pie chart.
Yeah, I mean, if you want some additional food for thought, the Battle Hardened at Sydney was Living Legend on Sunday, so after the calling. Michael Fung won on Viserai, taking out a Bravo star of the show in the final. So kind of what you'd expect. The top 8 was, I think, 3 Viserai, an Aurora, a Zen, a Dromai, and 2 Bravo star of the show. So yeah, I mean, a little bit more diverse than past weeks, with a Dromai getting in there, Zen in there, like you say, and Aurora, which is really interesting. So yeah.
There was also the Green Tree, like Living Legend event that happened this past weekend with a double Marlin finals.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this
Marlin
to you
Mirror
in
in the
pre-show.
final?
Yes, I believe so.
Wow.
There was definitely, I mean, a Marlin won, and I'm pretty sure it was a Marlin Mirror in the finals. So I mentioned this to you before we got on the pod, but yeah, I think the cat's a little bit out of the bag with that hero, where she's starting to pick up a lot more attention. The team has been thinking about her and working on her for a few weeks. Like, people are considering, we're investigating that hero. And yeah, she's out in the open now. I believe at the time of this recording, she is the 3rd most played deck on Talishar in the Living Legend format. So more and more people are picking up and investigating this hero. And I think that's part of why I'm also very excited for the Living Legend portion of Worlds. I do think there's exploration to be done, that hero. And now it feels like people need to think about that hero as well. And it kind of just opens up the metagame a little bit more. Both by her existing, people need to think about her, and then whatever else might come into like counter, for example, like New, for example, is quite good into Marlin and also is good into Starvo. So now suddenly does New become a bit more of a player as well because Marlin's a player. It's just, there's more interesting flux and investigations happening in that format as well.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think what I think the format is most going to come down to is there a deck that beats Bravo Star of the Show and Viserai? That's what I'm curious about. So I will be watching out for that. Let's get on to the Command and Cookout. If you want to get your questions in for the Command and Cookout, please do so. You can do what a few others did this past weekend and give us a note at an event when you see us, be that calling. You'll see Pankaj next to the World Championships in Philadelphia. Give him a nice handwritten note. Make sure you put your full name on it and your question. Make it legible so we can make sure we can read your question out as well. You can drop a comment in the YouTube comments below if you're on YouTube, or if you're a listener on Spotify, you can also drop it in the Spotify comments. We do check those regularly as well. Or you can email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. And if you're an Arsenal Pass patron, you can drop it in our patrons Discord in the Command and Cookout section there. This question comes from an in-person question that was given to Pankaj this past weekend from Ryan, who lives in, it looks like a made-up place. It looks like somewhere in Australia, honestly. They are Hamman215, though, is their handle they're commonly known as. Should LL just be classic constructed with Living Legend heroes, same ban list, just Living Legend heroes are legal? Pankaj, you got this question. What was your sort of immediate response when you read this question, if you had one?
Well, so first thing, Walla Walla is not a made-up place. It does exist in Washington, and that's where Ryan is from.
Don't believe it.
So this question, I feel it's quite similar to what we touched on the previous week, right? Where what is the vision for LL now? Is it just CC plus? And if it kind of is just CC plus, then this question is, I think, sort of implying that should it just be you get to play those LL heroes, but with a ban list that existed like when they were around, right? And then you just have LL heroes being legal. Like you ban all hypothermias, for example, and then Icelander's like playing or something like that. Or you ban all Autumn's touches, I suppose, and then Starbo's playing without Autumn's touches. That feels quite a bit of a departure from the vision for LL, which I think it could be argued that the current state of LL is already quite a bit of a departure from the original vision of LL, where you get to go play your broken stuff and just have fun with it, whereas now it's become a top-tier competitive format, right, at a Tier 4 event. So it could be argued that because we're already at a departure, we should maybe just go down this route. But I think I would prefer it if LL did have its own identity of some sort. And I think if it's just CC, where the LL heroes are legal and there's kind of the same ban list, to me that feels like even further in territory of not what people want. And we're already seeing quite a large disinterest in the game, in LL specifically, and I think going down this route would just lead to more of that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I sort of reflect on when LL had the most traction, and it was very early on, and not to say that was a great format, because obviously 8 Bravo Star of the shows and now very first Living Legend Battle Hardened, something has to be looked at with the format. But have we overcorrected potentially? Is it just a format that just doesn't work in execution because of the way this game has evolved? You referred to this kind of idea that was floated as CC plus. I would agree with that. That's how I would see this as well, was kind of, CC plus. Like, it's not Living Legend to me, because all the cards and all these things aren't legal to play with. A lot of strategies aren't legal to play with. Selfishly, like, that's just not what I want from a Living Legend format. Like, I want to play with my gold foil Crown of Seeds, but I can't, because it's literally unplayable, unfortunately, right? I would like to potentially have the ability to play Ultim. I don't, right? I think one thing that when you talk about the ban list, for instance, I think you kind of get a bit of with a CC plus in theory, is that you just get kind of the same thing of, okay, Autumn's Touch is banned. Oh, okay, so like my Verdance or my Florian plans are also hampered because of that. So it just doesn't quite work. There's just something that, so I think I am really interested in a Living Legend format. I just think they have to, we spoke about this last week, so I'm not going to harp on about it, but I think honestly, the more and more I think about it, the more the thing I come to is hero-specific bans. Like, that's just the thing that seems to me is the thing that would work. I can't really think of other ways to make it work, and I don't love the idea of a CC plus format effectively. I mean, that could be something else entirely, right? Like, maybe that is something, but that's not Living Legend to me. That is a very different conversation at that point to me. So that's probably my thoughts.
Yeah, I think I'm very in line with the hero-specific bans as well. I think that makes the most sense, and you get to have different flavors of Guardian, for example.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I just can't think of a better way.
Yeah, instead of like right now where it's just like, oh, you can only play Starvo if you want to play a Guardian, for example. I guess for a while we did have different flavors of Runeblade, but then now it feels like it's mostly Viscerai. So
and even then it's like we did have Viscerai, but RuneGate Chain was maybe just completely busted. I don't know. Like, It's kind of close.
Yeah. Although I think Chain's rumors of Chain's death were maybe slightly exaggerated. I think
By
the
you.
hero is still putting up. Yeah, true. Yeah, I guess I did say he was dead in the ground. But he seems to still be doing some stuff, which I'm surprised by. I'm curious to see whether that holds up once we're in Philadelphia.
Yeah, maybe. I think that Viserai is just completely insane, though, in terms of the turns. Like,
Yeah,
I know,
that's my
like,
thing. I feel like Viscerai is just strictly better, and so I'm like, because of that, Chain should be dead in the water. But I don't know, people are still playing him.
I think it mostly is, honestly. I saw CYK Lionel, and I think he lost like round 2 or round 3 or something. I briefly saw him. He was talking to someone and said that someone just like popped off. Or maybe it was him, actually. I think he popped off for like 45 on turn 2 or 3. And I'm like, yep, this is Viserai. This reminds me of Viserai and Blitz, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, even Viserai in CC when Skeletor was legal, right? Like, some turns it was like, okay, yeah, this hand just goes.
But you didn't have like Douse and Runeblood, Dirge, even if you only get like one Dirge, you didn't have Malefic, like you didn't have all these other cards that you have now. It's just so much more powerful.
True.
Anyway,
but yeah, I don't know. Moderate Quill Hand Skeletor was already just like, okay.
Yes, yeah. Especially
before
we saw Skeletor get banned. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that period of time, that PQ season. Yeah, just
100%.
I'm like, start a turn with 1 Rune Chant, you go Moderate Quill Hand, play something else, and then Skeletor Sonata and just blow people up.
It's all fun and games. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan, for the question. If you get questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. We're always on the lookout for great questions, especially themed questions as well around currently what's happening, or topical questions, but also potentially if you've got any themed questions about things as we head towards things like Silver Age, as we head to the new year and the next set, Road to National Season, things like that. Be a great time to get any questions in around those topics. Speaking of topics, Pankaj, it is time for the main topic, and we're going to do a little bit of a recap in some ways, but this is almost the pre-show for our pre-show next week on the Worlds Philadelphia. So next week our pod will be a preview for Worlds Philadelphia, where we're going to go through, by popular demand, we had a lot of responses, we will go through some of the deck lists. So for instance, like if Pankaj asked, Hayden, if you were playing, this is what we did for Worlds last year, what would your deck list look like right now? We're going to do something very similar, even though I won't be there, of what deck list I would be looking at and the iterations I would be looking at based on the metagame right now. We'll do that for at least Verdance and Syndra as the top 2 decks in the format, but also potentially for 1 or 2 other decks that are...
I'd put Gravy in there. Like, I think we should. Like, it's top 3.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
I am
okay.
not sure that Gravy is. I'm not sure it's the top 3 anymore. We'll talk about that.
Also, you did predict last week that Calling Sydney wouldn't have Gravy as the 3rd most represented deck.
Yeah.
And it was like very firmly
It was.
in the 3rd most. It was like the 4th was like 20 players fewer than Gravy.
It did have one of the worst conversion
I still think
rates,
Gravy,
though. Although so did Verdance.
True.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I still would put Gravy as like a 3rd deck, but sure, we'll talk about that. And then we'll figure out if we're doing a list of it.
That's fine. We can talk
I think we can just grab Justin Ku's list and just like talk about that.
That's fine. That's next week. But this week in the pod, we are going to do a bit of a recap of this past weekend's events and talk about just the evolution of this format from a deck list perspective, because I don't think we've ever had heroes, so in a known format or a bit of a solidified coalesced format, where deck lists look so different. I mean, we had a Battle Hardened winner and we had a calling top 4 Verdance list that looked completely different, like 30 cards different, which is insane. You wouldn't expect that at this time in a metagame. And if you look at Pro Tour Singapore, for instance, Gravy lists look very, very similar. Syndra lists look very, very similar. Slippy lists, like there was 6 or 7 cards different. People were talking about some of the tech cards, but all of the cores of these lists looked very similar. This past weekend, though, the Syndra lists that we saw even across the top 8 in Sydney, for instance, very different decisions in terms of the one costs, even some of the equipment that they played, which we'll get onto. The Verdance list, the cores looked very different. We're seeing people, a card that was staple for so long in the form of
Pulsing Aether.
Yep, Life,
that's
right?
gone.
Just
Absolutely
gone out
gone.
of these lists, right? So Rampant Growth, Potions, like are we playing Potions? Are you not playing Potions? Do you play Surgeon Eighth Tide? Do you not? So there's so many different things there which we'll get into. And it kind of cascades down where even some of the other decks, I think, have some of these questions and conversations as well, but actually less than the top 2 decks, which is really interesting. We saw an Acilio on stream at Sydney, different lists. I mean, I think the Gravies are probably more coalesced, but even then, as they react to the format, those lists are changing and evolving as well. Their blues are changing, their allies are changing. It's very, very interesting. So I guess, Pankaj, should we start with what happened over the weekend and talk a little bit about the meta?
Yeah, I want to add on that real quick. I just want to say I love it, and that's part of why this meta excites me quite a bit. I think and some of the listeners might know I do really enjoy deck building. Like, that's one of my favorite aspects of card games. And one of the, I don't want to call it flaws, but one of the things about Flesh and Blood deck building, which I didn't particularly enjoy, was that it felt like when you start building a deck, you start with 60, 70 cards straight up. And it felt like the amount of space you had to express your own deck building preferences or your deck building choices was usually limited to like 10 to 15 cards, because most of the rest of your deck just was kind of on rails based on the hero that you were playing.
Yeah.
And so seeing this happen right now with the list, like the fact that you can have 2 Verdance lists in the top 8 that are like 20, 30 cards different, or Syndra lists that are wildly different game plans even into the mirror, for example, and Verdance plans which are different into mirrors, different into Gravies, and still both succeeding, to me is a very, very exciting time in Flesh and Blood, and it's one of the reasons I've been really enjoying this format and doing the deck building associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly. So let's talk about the metagame a little bit from this past weekend. Yet again in Sydney, you're right, I was wrong. Verdant, Syndra, Gravy, top 3 most represented decks in the room, and very, very close, right? Verdance was again first most represented, but only just 33 copies of Verdance, 31 copies of Syndra, 29 of Gravy, and then it really dropped off. So that's kind of, we can take that for granted. That's been continuous over the last few weeks of events. One thing I want to talk about, though, is we continue to talk about this second echelon of heroes, effectively, and these ones that are vying to find the right spot in the metagame. And Acilio, Dash.io, KO, Prism, they're all actually very close in terms of the decks around them. Like, Acilio was the 4th most played, had 10 copies, but then there's like 3 copies difference between Victor and Dash.io, but there's 9 heroes in and around that player sort of level of play at Sydney. Now, I think, and I know that once we get to the Pro Tour, these collapse a little bit in terms of some of these. You don't see quite the spread of heroes, but I think we will see, because what is this? So over the weekend, you had about 40% of players playing the top 3 decks. Generally at Pro Tour, I think we'll see that anywhere from 45 to 60% be played by the top 3. I think it'll be around 45 to 50%. But what you will see more of is the 4th, 5th most played deck be a little bit more represented than what you have at Callings. And I think my question now is, which 2 decks are those? Like, which 2 or 3 decks? Or is this going to completely break the mold of Pro Tours we've seen previously, and actually 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th most played will be very close and fairly represented?
And what's super interesting is that I think as the meta collapses, as you're talking about, like as the top few decks take a larger percentage of the metagame, that favors some of these decks outside of the top disproportionately more compared to others. And the one I want to start with is actually Prism.
Okay.
I think if you tell me Prism is the 4th most represented at Worlds, I wouldn't be surprised, because I think Prism has fine matchups into the top 3 decks. Like, she's not super upset to play against any of the 3 of them. Depending amount of tech like they each bring, it could be a little bit tough. Like, if Syndra does pack in like 3, 4, 5 of the 7 power poppers, it obviously gets tougher. But overall, she has game plans in the top 3. She isn't super negative. She's like fine to play into them. She's actually very positive into Verdance. Although that's also maybe changing a little bit, especially since the loss of Pulsing Aether and it's come in Red Autumn's Touch in its place. That actually has hurt the Prism matchup quite a bit. But yeah, she does have game plans into the top 3. However, what she really doesn't want to see is the other fringe decks, right? She does not want to see a KO, Armed and Dangerous, for example. So as the meta collapses, it sort of favors her a bit more compared to the others, and I think that's quite fascinating.
Is there any other heroes that you think it potentially favors?
Potentially, like Dash.io, I think is another one that comes to mind, where favorite into Syndra, favorite into Gravy. decent, good, okay into Verdance, but really doesn't want to play something like a Florian,
Sure. Yeah.
A Cilio as well, I think, where fine to Gravies, not so great into Syndra, but good into Gravy and Verdance, but then you don't want to see, like, you don't want to face like a Dash IO, or you don't want to play like some disruptive thing. There is one hero I want to talk about, which had a very impressive conversion rate, and just a very impressive win rate as well if you look at Fablazing data, and that's Arachne Marinette. I don't understand this hero's angle, to be honest. I don't think you're favored into Verdance. I think you're very unfavored into Gravy. And your Syndra, if you're forced to go first, is like you're just only like slightly ahead. So I don't understand this hero's angle, but this hero had a 67% conversion rate into day 2 and was one of the top win rates over the weekend overall.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I have an answer to that. One thing I quickly wanted to point out is you spoke about disproportionately Prism getting buffed by potentially the top 3 decks.
The narrowing of the metagame.
I think KO has the complete opposite. To be honest.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think Syndra is the best matchup of those 3 for you, but the other 2 are not great.
Which then favors Prism even more then.
Yes, because KO drops off. So we will talk about that. I think we can move past that. But next week we will talk about what are those next few decks that we expect to see. To answer your question, I think the answer is the players, to be honest. So there were 4. I think there were 3 Marionettes. I think the graphic was actually wrong. I think there was 2 that made it through to day 2 of the 3 that were being played at the event in total. And those 2 players were 2 of Australia's much better players, I would say, in Cody Gerbert and Matt Clark. Matt Clark, unfortunately, I spoke to him afterwards. He played on stream and he was like, wow, I think I just punted my top 8 with his on turn 0, unfortunately, with a bit of a lapse of concentration rather, on his turn 0 play. Again, if you haven't seen the stream, of course, go check it out. We had some amazing games. We had some phenomenal games, honestly, on stream. Including,
and amazing casters too.
Oh, yeah, of course, that too. But yeah, I think you just had 2 players who know the deck very well, maybe had a particular angle. Yeah, so I mean, Matt I think he told me he'd beaten like 2 Gravies or something on that day, and then eventually lost to a Syndra. So he was like, oh, this feels a bit bad because he was more ticked for the Syndra matchup than the Gravy matchup. But anyway, I think that would be my answer to that question.
Okay. So you think it's a player skill gap difference. So do you think, I suppose, that we can maybe see similar good results with Marinette at Worlds, where if someone brings Marinette to Worlds, it would be a player of that high caliber?
No, because all players are of that caliber at Worlds, most, more or less, right? Not to say that callings are significantly softer fields or anything like that. Not at all. I just think that once you get to the World Championships, especially once you get to day 2, like, everyone's so good. It just is. Like, Flesh and Blood's just evolved to this point now where it's not where, like, the first couple of PTs, you would get a soft matchup or 2 on day 1 fairly often. Day 2, you might get 1, maybe someone who had, knew the deck really well, had favorable matchups, but was still newer to the game, sort of thing. You don't get those freebies at Worlds or PTs anymore. Honestly, sometimes at callings you barely get them anymore, but Worlds you definitely don't. So, and just the player caliber just steps up a level. So yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't necessarily see an angle with Marinette. And I thought about it a lot over the weekend because we had it on stream, because it was doing so well, and I'm just not convinced.
Yeah, I'm more confident in Prism's angle in the meta, for sure, compared to Marinette. And same thing, yeah, we've been, after these results from this past weekend, the really good conversion rate, the really good win rate, we were like, hey, let's take a look at this hero again. And once again, we're just sort of just scratching ahead, where it does feel like against like a really high-level Verdance or really high-level Gravy, you are just behind. And then your Syndra matchup isn't that favored to feel like you have a super real angle, it feels like.
Yeah, so here's something I want to come back to next week. We'll park this for next week, but what are the decks that emerge as, like we just spoke about with Prism, just potentially really good options for Pro Tour, but maybe just haven't been able to find their footing in Pro Quest season or in callings to the same extent because of just the widespread of field? I think we'll definitely come back to that question next week. Just to throw a couple of names out there for people to start to think about, though. Fang, I think, is a real interesting one that I think people should be thinking about. And actually, I think underhanded.
Is it Fang? Really?
Yeah, I think it might be Fang. We'll talk about it next week. I think underhanded cheat as well.
Okay. I could see underhanded cheat for sure. And I'll put Acilio and Dash.io as the names I'm going to add to the hat for that.
We will talk about it. A couple other things I wanted to speak about. Or should we talk quickly top 8 as well? We'll talk. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Do you want to talk any more about conversion? So Prism had a really good conversion rate, 38%. Of the top 3 decks, Syndra had the best conversion rate, 29%. This is today too. Victor had a very high conversion rate as well at 60%, which is quite interesting. But there was a lot of aggressive decks and a lot of Syndra, obviously, at the event. So not completely and utterly surprising. It was really cool to see like some Lyeths doing well on day 1, and Ollie Berry made day 2 on Lyeth as well. So I think he ended up with 2 draws, unfortunately, but was actually very close to being in and around the cash.
And Gravy and Verdance shared the same conversion into day 2 at 21% each.
Yeah, only Dorinthia had a worse conversion rate than those 2 heroes. So, okay, that's just true.
Oh, it looks like Acilio also was just 20%.
Oh, Acilio,
And Puffin. Puffin at 14. Only one lone Puffin made it through.
Thank you for correcting me.
But anyway.
Me. Let's talk top 8. So
Let's
top
talk
8.
about,
First of all, top 8. Absolutely stacked top 8. Matt Rogers, Gordon Coe, Pudding Tam, Peitung Liao, plus, Liam Benner, who's one of Australia's best. Spencer Horton. We've got some content creators in there as well. So just an absolute, and not to mention players that we'd already seen on stream that weekend, like Emma as well. So really, really strong top 8. 5 Syndras, 2 Verdants, and a Prism, which people will look at that, I think, and be like, yeah, classic story of the weekend. Syndra, just again, best deck in format, or fighting with Verdants, etc. Interesting to see Prism. But the top 16 was like so interesting as well, because going into I was looking at this, I was watching the standings as we went into the last round and the pairings, and I was like, wow, we could actually in theory have 6 different heroes in this top 8, which was crazy heading into the last round. Just unfortunately, all the Syndras didn't get paired into each other and got paired up against the other heroes, like the Marionettes, like the Acilios, and like I think Rhino was in contention in the last round as well, and won their last round. So that's how it kind of shook out. But the top 16 was actually quite interesting when it was all said and done.
Yeah, I think people often miss that the top 8, while it might look like Super Syndra heavy right now, it kind of just comes down to like the last couple of rounds of gem pairings in terms of how diverse your crowd can be. Because if you just look at the day 2 conversion, and as you said, the top 16, there was a lot of diversity there, and it kind of just the way the chips fell. Not saying, of course, that obviously Syndra is one of the best decks in the format. I expect her to have the most copies in top 8 out of any other hero, but 5 is definitely an element of gem variance, sort of going the Syndra's way in that sense, as you pointed out, where they didn't really pair into each other too much, and then they all just ended up in the top 8. And, you called it a stacked top 8, talking about the good players. I mean, also stacked just because it's 5 Syndras. Stacked full of Syndras,
True. Just to quickly, 9th, Gravy Bones, 10th, Verdance, 11th, Arachne Marionette, 12th, Kasai, 13th, Dorinthia, 14th, Verdance, 15th, Verdance, 16th, Kano. So, yeah, a lot of other decks in and around that. So a lot of Syndra and Verdants in the top 16, but then a lot of singleton copies of other decks. And this is crazy. Look at this top 16. I just looked at the top 8. The top 16, 9th, Justin Koo, 10th, Jacob Clements, 14th, Nova Chan, 15th, Shrey Wu. Like, there was just craziness in that top 16. Like, this has had the feeling of a calling before the World Championships, where just everyone was out. And this is what the World Tour does, right? The World Tour, the Player of the Year race, gives people such massive incentive to travel out to somewhere like Sydney before they go back to the US for the World Championships, which selfishly, I love and I think is great for the game.
Mm-hmm. Should we talk about evolution of lists? The stuff, like get into the meat of maybe some of these deck lists and the unique things that they're doing and the different game plans that people are finding for the other top matchups?
I'd love to. I'd love to start with Syndra, I think, because it's a bit of an easier conversation. And I want to point out, first of all, for those that don't know, it was a 80-card mirror in the finals between LPT and Gordon Co. They were playing the exact same list, I believe. LPT came up with the list, shared it with Gordon. Don't know whether they've been, maybe you know more about this. I don't know whether they've been testing together or what, but 2 of Asia's best and ended up on the same 80. And of course, Pudding Tam also top-8 that event. The lists across it looked pretty different, I would say. One thing that I thought was quite interesting, though, is that all of them were playing Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. All 3 of those Syndra's were playing Mask of the Pouncing Lynx in their list.
Yeah, which is wild. And I think we saw them bring it in against Verdance. I think we saw Gordon bring it in against Matt Rogers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a piece of tech we have yet to see. And speaking of equipment, Flamescale Furnace as well showing up
for putting
in a bunch of these Syndra lists, alongside a whole. I mean, even Gordon's list had Flamescale Furnace.
Oh, so maybe the list was slightly different. Maybe Peitang Liao's list was slightly different then.
Sorry, Puddings did not have Flamescale Furnace. It was Gordon's. As long as as long as the official Fab TCG website has it correctly. Yes.
You're right. They all 3 of them had Mask, but Gordon and LPT had the Flamescale Furnace as well.
At Furnace and 8D reacts, and I have to imagine that's like Dash.io respect, I think. But then it also sort of has maybe a little bit of splash damage into Prism. That helps you block out their heralds a little bit better.
And also into Assassins.
Yeah, because they don't seem to be on like the 7 power poppers. So just, yeah, it's already so different, like the equipment being so different. And of course, this new game plan, we spoke about this at the top of the pod, right? The fact that new game plans are being discovered as we are 1 week out from Worlds just makes this still a very exciting time of the game, despite the hero still being the same. But suddenly Mask of the Pouncing Lynx coming out against Verdance, how Verdance is going to adapt. There's still so much movement going on within the deck list. I think seeing Lynx against Verdance, it definitely shook me a little bit. I was like, wait, what is this? What is this technology?
Yeah. And I think you're seeing just some solidification of what's happening in the format of everyone identifying Syndra as the most explosive deck, right? And saying, you know what? I don't really want any additional. So yeah, Throw Dagger. I actually think Pudding Tam wasn't playing Throw Dagger, which is really interesting. But was playing some yellows, so some yellow Bramble Claw, whereas Gordon Co. and LPT were playing the throw dagger. I keep almost wanting to call it throw knives. I don't know why. Throw dagger. But what they're all trying to do is just really exploit the chest. So they are playing these 1 costs, but one of the challenge with these decks is they've been playing cards like Breaking Point in the past. And these guys, I think, have correctly just said, you know what? People just aren't arsling against us in aggressive mirrors because everyone knows about Breaking Point. It's a known quantity, and also a lot of the time you're trying to force mask triggers in the Syndra mirror and just throw your cards, so you don't actually really arsenal. So let's just cut that card and let's just go for consistency and play Hunt the Hunter, which is a card we've seen from Syndra in the past, but really going back to this true explosive Syndra style where you try and because now the Verdance matchup has become really a lot closer as well. So you really need this explosive damage output from the chest. And so Hunt the Hunter, I think, has become the answer to keep your deck as consistent as possible. Because if you stumble against Verdance, they're winning games because of it.
Yeah, so it's not just the explosive part of it. I spoke at the top of the pod where, like, Verdance against Syndra, if you, like, brick twice against a Syndra, you kind of just lose unless they brick. And yeah, to your point, that's exactly what it feels like in the Verdance-Syndra matchup quite a bit. It's like the person who wins is the one who doesn't stumble. And the reason Hunt the Hunter helps so much with the not stumbling is also because some of these decks are running 3 Oath of Loyalty.
Yeah,
and when you draw Oath of Loyalty, especially now they're running like Pain in the Backside, for example, which in my opinion is a fantastic evolution of the Syndra list, because now you incentivize your opponent to block on Chainlink 1, which is not something they ever want to do because they already need to block like Chainlink 3 and 4. So it's not force you to have like another 4. A lot of times you just have to let the Pain in the Backside go, and that's like another, like, it just means they got an additional 4 damage starter, right? Like another Ravenous Rabble or another Oath of Loyalty. But if your starter is Oath of Loyalty, you often do need like extra fealties lying around because you're running Pain in the Backsides and Ravenous Rabbles and Cut-Throughs. So it can brick. That can be another source of your deck fully bricking. And that's why you see some, I think there was one of the Syndra lists in top 8 just had 0 Oath of Loyalty, for example, for the exact reason. But if you do want to go up to 3 Oath of Loyalty to have the explosiveness that you're talking about, or just a higher average power level, then you need to Hunt the Hunter and you give up the on hits of like Breaking Point and Art of Dragon Scale as well. The fact that Gordon was on Art of Dragon Scale is also very, very interesting. Opting instead for Art of Dragon Fire, just what you're talking about, just doesn't want to brick, just wants to send damage, and if he has a spare fealty, he hits more damage rather than an on hit.
Yeah, and just saying, you know what, like, I respect that people are now know about Art of Dragon Scale, and Verdances will be able to block it better, or they'll save their equipment to make sure they can stop an Art of Dragon Scale, whatever it might be. I mean, the card I think is still insane in the mirror. Honestly, Art of Dragon Scale I think it's just completely broken in the mirror. But they're playing more defense reactions. It didn't look like they're playing them in the mirror, which is also something that I think a lot of Syndra players have just come to the conclusion that just defense reactions are not good in the mirror.
You can't be blocking the mirror, it feels like, unless like it's an on-hit. Yeah.
Well, you can't force Mass Trigger if you do that. And then also when they're playing cards like Pain the Backside and stuff, they just get so much value out of Chainlink 1 anyway. So, it's really interesting. I mean, it was so interesting watching people adapt to Pain the Backside through the weekend, because I spoke about this on the cast as well. Exactly what you said. Pain the Backside is just such a good Chainlink 1 because it forces the opponent to make a decision. And I think Verdance is correctly saying, well, yeah, it's just congratulations, you've got yourself a 0 for 4 and potentially a way to guarantee the resource, because I cannot afford to block this on Chainlink 1 because that will push a Mass Trigger. So yeah, it's all a lot of things happening with these lists right now. The other couple of cards I wanted to talk about, so yeah, no Breaking Point, less Art of Dragon Scale, a lot of Oath of Loyalty. I know some people have been cutting that card down, but they're Hunt the Hunter is kind of the other piece that helps you with consistency. The other card is Blood Runs Deep, is a card that people have really gone away from, I think, but some of them were playing some number of them. So the LPT list, Gordon Co list, was playing 1 Blood Runs Deep, for instance. But I know it's a card that, again, others have gone away from because of consistency, to make sure they have enough starters in their deck.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Blood Runs Deep. I was expecting to see some of it go, but I have to wonder, maybe part of the Blood Runs Deep consideration was also the Links package, where if you're on Links, you can actually teeter out Blood Runs Deep in a certain spot if you just need like the guaranteed damage. Mm-hmm. I could see that perhaps being why Gordon and LPT won just 1, right? I see a single copy of something, I'm like, oh, you're tutoring this out somehow. And Links, to me, feels like it fits that very well.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll point out is where everyone was playing Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, Gordon and LPT's list had 3 Lava Bursts, whereas Pudding Tam decided to go for 1 Lava Burst, 1 Tenacity, 1 Salt the Wound. So just a bit of an interesting sort of deviation there as well. So basically, there's a lot of interesting things happening with these lists. You already called out the 8 defense reactions. That's a big one. 7 to 8 defense reactions as well. So yeah, there's just a lot of variety in what's happening with these lists. Interestingly, I think... Just quickly. Also, Pudding Tam playing Spellfray Leggings as opposed to the AV Leggings, but Tide Flip is still seemingly of interest to some players.
The last card I want to talk about in the central list is Rake Over the Coals. So we have Curtis Phelps, who had 3 rakes in his list, and then we had Spencer Horton, who had 2 rakes in the list, which I think is their list's plans for the Verdance matchup, like into Earth. You just want a little bit more explosiveness. I've seen Rake even be used as like a pseudo, not exactly ancestral, obviously, but just as a pseudo like combat trick for +1 on the mask trigger to just go ahead and draw a card. So it ends up being +1 guarantee a mask, for example, on the turn that they're going to block it out. And when you pair that card up with Wrath of Retribution, it just feels like you win on the spot. It ends up being +7, +8 value on a turn like that. It is kind of scary, though, where I'm just like, it's best when you can Arsenal it. It's best on a 5-card hand, but a lot of times if you try and Arsenal into an Earth hero, like into your Verdance, that just opens you up to getting plowed under. So it's an interesting piece, but yeah, 2 of the Cinderas in the top 8 did have 2 to 3 copies of this card.
I don't like them personally. I think they're, to your point, I think they're best on a 5-card hand, and it's just not really the prevailing way to play the deck right now. And I'm others have different ways to play it, but I think I prefer playing in ways that don't support that card. Just quickly, the other cards, actually, because the more and more I study these lists, there's a few other things that stand out to me. Is the three chaps from Asia, I will say, LPT, Gordon Co, and Pudding Tam, no poppers in the list, right? So they're disrespecting Prism, whereas a lot of other lists have been playing 2 to 5 poppers in their list.
But they have more D-reacts. I think a lot of lists are
like
just on shelters, and LPT and Gordon are on 8 D-reacts, and Pudding Tam is on 5 with 3 shelters and 2 sinks.
Yeah.
So more D-reacts would just help in a Prism matchup, but yeah, you're right. Poppers does feel like something that could be quite punishing.
It helps a little bit, but 2 cards is double the amount of 1 card when it comes to blocking. That's what I would say.
True. Yeah. And then, one more card I want to talk about. Yeah. Warmonger's Diplomacy in a bunch of these central lists.
Yeah, as it should
be. Well, yeah. So on the one hand, I'm like, okay, any hopes of someone trying to like bring Marlin to try and be a Syndra Predator, kind of, it's so hard to play against Warmongers as Marlin. It feels almost a little bit like an oversight because the hero only loads off of some sort of non-attack. It'll be like you pop gold or you play 3 of a kind or something. I guess there's like Tipple, for example. Most of the time, it's loading off of those kind of effects. So unless you already had an arrow in Arsenal, Warmongers kind of just completely bricks you. Unless you're on like some honing hood tech, which I think we saw at an AGE event, which is interesting, but then you lose out on the gold. I don't know, whatever. Warmongers is rough, but I think the main thing is also there's a whole bunch of added equity into Gravy.
And Dash
like
IO.
we've seen how, and Dash IO. We've seen how some like top Gravy players like Justin Koo can just go ahead and still win against Syndra. If the Syndra has 3 Warmongers, it does feel like it just it takes a matchup to it's so incredibly difficult for Gravy to win.
Yeah, I personally can't see why you wouldn't be playing 3 Warmongers in this format. I've been playing it since the first week with Syndra. I think even just things like you just pair into like Vincent, or especially in a calling situation, I think you should definitely be playing 3 Warmongers. Maybe at PT you can work out the metagame and you don't feel that you need to play it because maybe you think Prism's on the rise or whatever it might be. But I think Warmongers is very good.
The reason to cut it would probably be if you're trying to fit poppers for Prism.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Exactly. So
like that's it. Yeah.
You have a bit of a decision to make there. But I would also say that the defense reactions are kind of taking that slot. So it's all very interesting, I think, in terms of the defense reaction piece. I'm still a little bit uncertain on the defense reactions personally as to exactly what role they're playing. Maybe they're expecting Rises of Guardian or something. I'm not too sure.
We could fatigue a Dash IO who's not expecting it if you have 8D reacts in Furnace.
Yeah, you could try.
Maybe.
You could try. Yeah, you might be able to. It'll be close. So just lastly, Loyalty from Beyond the Grave seems to have fallen out of the list, which makes sense to me. There's not really these long, grindy matchups in the format right now, so Loyalty Beyond the Grave, doesn't really speak to me as a card that you necessarily want to play because a lot of these slow matchups are falling away. You're better off with probably Warmongers, Poppers, or your defense 0-4 defense reactions.
Loyalty Beyond the Grave to me is a card that's best into disruption. So, for example, if there's victors running around trying to prey on you,
marionettes,
then you play Loyalty. Yeah, the assassins. You play Loyalty so that you have a bit more blocking equity on the turns you're being disrupted, and then the turn where you don't get disrupted, you get to pop it and have a 6-card hand instead. And that's the point of Loyalty Beyond the Grave. But yeah, to your point, there isn't a lot of disruption happening in this format right now, so that card does lose quite a bit of value.
100%. Let's move on to Verdance, because this is the other place where we've had a big lot of iteration, and we sort of saw this starting a week ago, I think, with some of these Verdance lists at various Battle Hardens, particularly in the hands of someone like a Jacob Clemens, for instance. But the rise of Red Autumn's Touch has been, I guess, a bit of a talking point, definitely. And you saw on stream Jacob Clemens as well, running a very similar list again. Probably more similar in some ways to what Matt Rogers ended up top 8ing with. So there's a bit of the diversion, I would say, right now, where these lists are heading in 2 different directions or forking off, I would say, is the playing a card like Surgent Aethertide and supporting Rampant Growth Life in the list. A lot of lists have gone, I'm not playing Rampant Growth Life, I'm not playing Pulsing Aether Life, and I'm not playing Surgent Aethertide. Lucas, who won in Tacoma, was playing those cards. But then, for instance, Jacob Clemens, Matt Rogers, I think even Brody Spurlock, I think when I saw his games on the weekend, instead were playing these Red Autumn's Touches. They were playing, Matt was playing 3 Scar for Scar. I think Jacob might have had a couple in his list. So, and also 2 outed in Matt's list, for instance. A very different direction with their lists. And that's before you get into all the different blues and things that these lists have decided to play.
Yeah, just looking at the 2 Verdance lists that made top 8 and how different their game plans are into, say, the Gravy or the Mirror.
Well, did you see Jacob's game into
Prism?
Yeah,
I saw the game into Prism.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yes, I saw the game into Prism. Yeah, just blocking out. With all the extra 7s that you have,
didn't
like
drop
Finding
below
Spirits
40.
and Red Arms Touches.
Didn't drop below 40 life.
And just like blocking a bunch and just chipping the Prism down, which you can do with the Poppers. That's why they're like so amazing in that matchup, because you get to pop and still block the second thing and still present something to them, so they don't have infinite space. The pop is what lets you really pressure, whereas the D reacts, you kind of just are stuck in a blocking pattern where you can block efficiently, but they're still getting all the space because you haven't put a clock on them.
Yeah.
But coming to these Verdance lists, a big thing. So potions Like one list completely has 0 potions, and I'm so curious how the no potions list fares into the mirror. And I do believe Matt Rogers did obviously beat some mirrors on the way to top 8, and I'm just so curious how those games went. But instead of potions, he does have Millennium Tree, whereas the other top 8 Verdance list, while they have potions, this is Emma's list, has potions, does not have Millennium Tree. So I do wonder if that's perhaps a differentiating factor, where the lack of the potionless list is just trying to sort of play a tempo non-combo game off the back of something like Millennium Tree to just leak enough and then get the opponent. And the potions list is obviously trying to do the combo thing. So that's one. That's like the Verdance Mirror, the game plans are diverging. But then there's also the Gravy plan, right? The Matt Rogers list, for example, is clearly trying to fatigue the Gravy, if I'm looking at the list correctly. I think so. You don't think so? Oh, wait, I guess...
I think that's what Emma's trying to do.
No, it doesn't.
Because Talishar is
yes.
in Emma's list.
Yes, it doesn't have Talishar. Yeah, sorry, I mixed up the two. The one with Talishar is the one trying to fatigue the Gravy. Whereas this one's just trying to play like super efficient 3 Pursuit of Knowledge, Hayden, which is so cool.
Pretty good.
You like Pursuit of Knowledge of Sawbones or something, and you get 5 cards, and you're playing Millennium Tree in the matchup, so you can resolve the tree and just sort of kill them. Stuff like, Heart of Fyendal as well, where you can pitch it and then ping a Rigor Mortis. And I think another card I want to point out is Ripple Away, which I think you can, out of nowhere, blow up a Gravy's hook.
Yep.
When you have Ripple Away.
You can.
Like they think they're going to make it off like their Tipple or something, or their Scuba, for example. They're like, oh, yep, activate hook, attack with Scuba, and making a gold off this. You discard Ripple Away. They don't get the gold. Now you block the Scuba, and the hook just dies. And then it feels like if you blow them out with that card, you maybe just win on the spot when they no longer have hook. So
yeah,
it's super interesting Gravy plans. And then while on the other side, Emma is fatiguing Gravies with Talishar.
Yep. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think. I mean, I don't think the Talishar plan is honestly good. I don't think it beats good Gravy players literally ever. Honestly, I think fine for a pro quest strategy potentially for players that maybe haven't encountered just how to stack their gold, and especially if they're not playing cards like Last Ditch Effort, for instance. I think as soon as they're playing anything like Last Ditch Effort, or they're stacking gold, or they know how to stack for their Humperdinck turns, for instance, I think it's no bueno. It doesn't work. So I definitely like the Matt plan more, and I'm curious. I would have really liked to have seen Jacob play a match into Gravy, because he was also playing cards like Fyendal's Fighting Spirit, and you spoke about the mirror, and honestly, this is like bull dance. Like it's not bull, it's like Bullander, it's bull verdance, right? Like they're playing Red Autumn Starch, Fyendal's Fighting Spirit, so I think that's how they're approaching the mirror as well, alongside Millennium Tree, which I just think is just such a busted card right now.
This is just giving me Barcelona flashbacks, because if you remember, Icelanders before then still had a bit more arcane stuff happening. And then by the time Barcelona came around, they were running like Raging Onslaught, and the other card that has like the brute text on it, where if it isn't defended by 2 cards, it gets like +1 or something like that. I forget the name of the card. But they were just running more and more of these 6 and 7 power cards, because not only was it amazing in the mirror, because you don't charge up the Alluvian, you also just had additional poppers for Dromai. And it just feels to me like that's what's happening with Verdance. And to be honest, I mean, Pulsing Aether, gosh, the equity on the card just has gone down so much over time, particularly because Syndra has that Spell Void Dagger now. And in the Syndra matchup as Verdance, you kind of need to always be sending a red at them. Like every turn you want to be chipping them down like 6 or 7 life. And the fact that Pulsing Aether, because of the Spell Void Dagger, is just 5, it was just like, okay, this card has to go. And you send a red Autumn's Touch instead, and it feels so much better.
1000% better. Yep. So I think that's kind of the evolution we talk about. We're going to speak about this more next week, because we'll talk about deck lists specifically. But what I want to put out there, and keen to hear from our listeners as well, what do you expect to happen as we get to the World Championships? Like, post in our comments. We'll talk about some of them next week, because I think here's something interesting, and this is just one of the flow-on impacts of these deck list changes and evolutions that could happen. Where does Florian sit? For instance, if all the Verdances are cutting pots and Rampant Growth Life and things like that, is it all of a sudden possible that you could be playing an aggressive Florian deck that's, does that... I mean, are you any good into Syndra or Gravy? That's a different question, right? But there's all these other things that start to become, for me, questions. If you can't potentially, what about a Guardianless, for instance, that does defend really well and can still deal with some amount of arcane damage? Like, can you beat that, for instance? So I think there's more evolution to happen in this format. Will we be able to do it all in the space of a week? Maybe not, but a few players might be able to do it and find an angle, which is potentially very interesting.
Also, if Verdances are attacking you with red arms touches and fighting spirits, it sort of makes you able to clash more consistently. Because I think one other problem that something like Victor has in the matchup is
Can't clash.
You're holding your test of strength, and then they send a pulsing aether at you or something, and you're like, ugh. But now they send a red autumn's touch at you, and you're like, ooh, I actually can clash. Then again, they might be better at winning the clashes now because they have more attacks, so maybe it's a bit of a bit of a double-edged sword. But I think that's an interesting thing.
Wow.
I do want to ask you one question, coming back to specifics of the list. Matt Rogers' list has 3 This Rounds on Me in it as Verdants. What are your thoughts on that card?
I don't know. I haven't really tested it, honestly. I assume it's for Syndra and Dash.io. I don't know enough about it. It's interesting, that's for sure. The Pursuit of Knowledge, obviously, I saw it immediately. It was like, right, smart, that makes sense. But This Round on Me, I'm more of the, okay.
I saw Kano's doing Pursuit of Knowledge into Gravy quite a bit after Gravy just came out and was everywhere.
Yeah.
The main thing being Kano, unlike Verdance, just literally has no way to deal with Sawbones. Like, there's actually not a card in the deck that can kill the Sawbones. And that is extremely annoying for the pop-off turn, obviously, because when the Sawbones prevents an effect, as a exponential prevention happening, right, because of Wildfire. Yeah. So Pursuit of Knowledge into that was actually kind of quite backbreaking. When not only do you kill the Sawbones, you have an extra intellect as well to pop off into them. And so seeing in Verdance is actually super, super cool as well.
Yeah.
Because I also do think Verdance also has quite a bit of a Sawbones problem, where when it comes to clearing 1 health allies like Rigor Mortis, you really rely on the Verdance pings. And if there's a Sawbones around, you just can't rely on your Verdance pings anymore. Like Fighting Spirit, the reason Fighting Spirit and Heart of Fyendal are so strong is because you can send like that attack somewhere else, like to Face or maybe to a Chum or whatever, and then you use the ping to clear off a pesky little thing. But Sawbones messes with that in a very annoying way, and Pursuit of Knowledge feels like a very clean answer for that card.
Yeah, I saw someone pitch a Heart of Fyendal for a Fyendal's Fighting Spirit. And I was like when they were turned on as Verdants, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is broken.
Yeah, I think and they were low life, obviously.
Yeah, they were low life. Yeah. It's like, here's my 2-card 11. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, that I think we'll do it for episode 238 of Arsenal Pass. Please do drop your comments. Let us know what you think. Help us do the preview show. Maybe you've got some questions you want to specifically ask for our preview show for the World Championships next week. Maybe there's some questions on your mind about what might happen in this format, what might happen at the World Championships that you want to hear from us about. Also, let us know what you think will happen with the metagame as we head into this coming World Championship weekend. Drop them all in the comments. We will go through them. We will prep our show. We're talking about some of the specific decks and the evolution a bit more that we just spoke about and what we think these decks will look like heading into the weekend, and maybe some interesting meta decisions that players will be faced with, and potentially an interesting pick or two to make that could disrupt this coming weekend. Big shout out to all the Arsenal Pass patrons, and until next week, that's it from me and Pankaj. We'll see you in the next episode.